Thanks for doing this. First and foremost, we appreciate it. And I've been a fan of your channel for a long time. In fact, I was thinking about it. You're actually one of the first channels that I started following from the very get go, which is kind of cool. There's not too many YouTubers I follow that I started from the very beginning without having to catch up too much of the history. But it's been fun seeing your channel grow, and I really am a fan of your content and what you guys are putting out. And so it's really cool for me to have you on the show and talk a little bit about that stuff. And the other thing that's kind of cool of why I like your channel so much and why I recommend it to people is because I really appreciate your sarcasm and dry sense of humor on the show that comes across in your content. And I think some of it started to slip out a little bit in your last series on the Continental Divide. There seemed to be a lot of car horns and honking in that video for editing some of the language and stuff. But it's kind of
well, the funny thing about the Continental Divide trip is it was a lot more real and a lot more raw because I had to do everything myself, right? Like I didn't have Braxton along for the ride this time, so to kind of, I was at a weird point in my life too. Like I lost my job when I got back from the Trans-America Trail trip, and I had a little bit of money saved up, and but by that point, which was like October, I was kind of in a weird place where like I wasn't so sure I should take that trip, and because it's a huge financial undertaking. I mean, those kinds of trips just cost so much money to do. I mean, I know everybody's out there saying, oh, you can do it on a budget, but like traveling 6,000 to 7,000 miles over the course of like 6 weeks is expensive, just in gas alone. So I kind of felt like I was out there doing it for other people rather than doing it for myself, like the first trip. And I kind of wanted to give Aaron a little more exposure. I thought what he was doing was really cool. I thought it would make for good content. And the more I started talking about why am I here, it started to feel like I was doing it for other people. And so that made it a little less enjoyable. And so, yeah, I was a lot more grumpy on the Continental Divide trip than I was on the, and plus it was just so much work. It just constantly felt like I needed to, like, anything that was happening, right? I needed to make sure the camera was on, and I needed to make sure the camera was in case I missed, I didn't want to miss anything. And I didn't, so it just started to feel like a ton of work, and I was really exhausted. And, I was drinking every night and just trying to figure out what I was going to do when I got back. And so, yeah, you saw more of me in Continental Divide trip, my true personality, because it was just, and that trip was a lot more frustrating overall. It was a lot more difficult. The terrain was insane. The weather was just garbage. So it was, a lot of that stuff. So, and I still have a bunch of videos. I haven't had the motivation and inspiration to put them out because a lot of it's just not as fun as the Trans-America Trail trip was.
So do you think that there's a level of you not being as proud of that content as obviously the first trip then?
Yeah, well, for sure. Braxton's a hard guy to keep up with as far as the level of skill that he brought to the channel. I mean, he changed the whole direction of what I thought the channel was going to be. I only started it because I knew that I wanted to kind of document it for myself, and I wanted to be like show friends, and really I wanted my wife to be able to keep track of me, and I just wanted a way for people to kind of have a reference to what I was doing, not only so that I didn't, mostly so I didn't have to explain it as much. You know what I mean? I didn't want to have to like say, well, this is what I did to like 600 different people. Every time my friends call and say, where have you been? What'd you do? And then I could just like go to the channel, man, and watch it. It's enjoyable. It's good. And then when Braxton joined the team, I didn't even really know who he was. I had an idea of what his talent was because he had a portfolio that I could take a look at or whatever. And he set such a high bar that once the Trans-America Trail trip was done and the channel was taking off, I felt like I couldn't move forward until I stepped my own game up as far as being able to shoot stuff, edit stuff quickly. I wanted it to be daily. I wanted to keep the pace of what we were doing. So, yeah, I'm not quite as proud of the content of the Continental Divide trip because it's not in the same it's not even the same league as what the Transamerican Trail was, right? It was a totally different situation, totally different scenario. So um, it's tough for me to, it's tough for me to keep it at that level. I want to keep the level of production high, and I want to keep the level of entertainment high. So, and I know that like I'm hitting certain days where I feel like I'm forcing it. So once I start to feel like I'm forcing it, I kind of let the stuff collect dust. So I do have some cool content. I don't think I'm going to stick to the daily thing, because if I do that, I'm not going to put it out, because the day that I'm stuck on, it's a really boring day. We weren't really doing anything. And then eventually I got so tired that there was days where I didn't shoot at all because I was just burnt out. And
So a couple of things you mentioned there that I wanted to talk about was, I kind of assumed this, and I think maybe you guys said it a little bit in the first series, the Transamerican Trail series, but how long did you know Braxton before you guys hit the road together on that trip?
online, maybe 3 weeks. In person, we hung out once. We went to an off-road park, and it was his first time ever camping, and that was when I first put the rough country suspension on. We went to Badlands in Indiana, and to test everything out, and that was the first time we hung out. No, second time, because we went to my friend Leo's garage to put some stuff on the Jeep, and that was the first time I hung out with Braxton. That was in Chicago, so it was easy for him to get there. So didn't know him well at all. And leading up to leaving for the Transamerican Trail, we were in New York for a week. I was hanging out with my wife. I was spending some time with her, some friends and family and stuff like that. And he got to kind of see what I was like around my friends, which was not the person I was when we met, like at the off-road park and whatever. And yeah, me and my friends we have a long history of like going hard and partying a lot. You know what I mean? It was leading up to this big trip, so I was like, I was hanging out with everybody. We're bouncing around and we're doing all this crazy stuff, and staying up till 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning and stuff like that. And Braxton would just be like on his laptop, he was working on this video. I don't know how deeply you follow Braxton, but he did this video of like this guy like kind of hallucinating in the desert, and there's these like sirens, like these girls that are all like scantily clad and stuff. And he was working on that video while we were in New York, and so he was just straight focused on that. So like I didn't get a chance to really get to know him there. I didn't really get a chance to know him too well in the 2 days we were at Badlands, and the one day we were at my friend's garage. So I didn't know Braxton from a hole in the wall, all the way up until the point that we left.
So for those listening that don't know yet or haven't checked out TrailSpinTV on YouTube, the first series that you did was the Transamerican Trail, where you and Braxton traveled from. It starts in North Carolina, correct?
Yeah, Cape Hatteras is where we started.
Yeah,
and
went all the way to the Oregon coast.
Yep, and Port Orford. Yep, yeah, no.
It was how many days? 34 days that you spent then?
Yeah, it's kind of yeah. We were traveling for a total of about 5 weeks, 5.5 weeks, something like that, including going back from Oregon back to Chicago. So yeah, there's 34 episodes, 34 days of Transamerican Trail episodes.
Dude, I don't know if I could spend 34 days on the road in a Jeep with my closest friends or brothers, let alone someone that I've only met a few times. That had to have been both stressful and a bit weird to do, right?
No, now knowing what you know about me, just from following me, I don't get. I have a very small circle of friends. We know each other very intimately. We know each other very well. I'm very honest and blunt with my friends, more so than I even am on my channel. And I kind of expected the worst going on a trip like that with somebody I didn't know. But what you saw on camera was genuinely how we were around each other all the time. We gave each other space. We're both creatives. We're both Aquariuses, if you believe anything about like astrology or whatever. So we just got along we got along very well, like instantly. Braxton did develop a bit of a character. He is a filmmaker at heart, you know what I mean? So the Braxton you see on camera is not necessarily the Braxton that he is when he's off camera. When he's off camera, he's very focused, he's very quiet, he's very withdrawn. He's a hustler, you know what I mean? Like he's a hard worker. Kind of the same with me. Like, we're both introverted people. So on camera, that becomes very exhausting. You know what I mean? And then when we're off camera, we both just kind of gave each other our space, didn't get in each other's way, and that was important. We did share a tent the entire time, so there wasn't a whole lot of privacy. But he would stay up till 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning, sitting in the Jeep working on videos because we uploaded every day. Where I get some rest, and he would kind of come into the tent, and maybe we'd be in the tent together for like an hour, hour and a half, and I would wake up early and start like packing things up, working on breakfast, stuff like that, while he kind of slept in. And we instantly developed a system that worked really well. So yeah, it was kind of scary to do that, and probably more so for him because he had zero experience camping and traveling like that, and even me, I had very minimal experience. So for him to trust me to kind of guide that expedition and jump in a vehicle with somebody he didn't know took a lot of balls for sure. And but yeah, it ended up working out. We got along very well. So
That's awesome. I was kind of one of the questions I had following up on that was how much of a gearhead were you or into vehicles and off-roading before you started that Trans-America Trail
yeah,
trip?
I mean, as far as vehicles, I've worked on my own vehicle since my first vehicle. My father was very mechanically inclined. We could pretty much do anything except the transmission. So just I've been always buying used vehicles and stuff like that. I've always worked on it. My first vehicle was an 88 Jeep Cherokee, an 88 XJ that handed down to me from them. Blew the engine like within like 2 months. It was just high mileage. I mean, so learned how to swap an engine, brakes, suspension, exhaust, like all that kind of stuff. So as far as being comfortable with being able to work on a vehicle, I wouldn't call myself a gearhead. Like, I don't go out of my way to modify vehicles. This is my first experience with that kind of thing. But as far as like knowing mechanically how a vehicle works and how to work on one, it's always just been something I've been into. I mean, when I was a teenager, I used to install car stereos and stuff like that. So got really into wiring and learned how to, learn how to use a multimeter and stuff like that. So that having that confidence and knowing how to work on a vehicle definitely made me more willing to do a trip of this nature. I feel like if you don't know how to work on your own vehicle, I wouldn't, you know what I mean? Maybe the Trans-American Trail, you're never really that remote on the Trans-American Trail. You're always pretty close to a town. So unless you have a lot of money as backup, definitely know how to work on your own stuff. But as far as like camping and stuff like that, or overlanding in general, like I really didn't know anything. I didn't get started until the November prior to leaving for that trip. Was like my first overlanding trip.
Yeah, that one of those first videos that you put up when you were testing some gear, I mean, most of that stuff looked like you just went to Walmart and stocked up on what you needed, right?
Yeah, like yeah, specifically like I mean, you could. There's certain things that I always look at when I watch other people who are just getting started. Is like the blue plastic water bottle. Like, how new does your like giant blue plastic water bottle look? And yeah, we go back and watch that Badlands trip before we left. Everything was pretty brand new. Um, I had a pretty good job like leading up to then. I had a ton of credit. You know what I mean? So and I knew that I could pay. I could pay. I had a lot of money to play with basically. So I go out and I bought a lot of like chintzy, like Walmart brand stuff at the beginning, and just kind of learned how to use that and figured, okay, I'm not really feeling this 2 burner stove, let me get a better one. Or if I'm not really feeling this camping chair, let me get a better one. And it was kind of like a lot of the stuff that you see in there is maybe second or third iterations of stuff I had already bought or tried out or tested or whatever. So yeah, it was fairly new, but it was also because like I was just kind of scaling up to the point where I was knew that I would be comfortable being on the road for 6 weeks. So
Well, and I mean, you've upgraded some stuff that you've talked about on your channel with your camping setup, but for the most part, compared to some of these guys out there that are doing the YouTube thing or in the overlanding scene, you kind of keep it pretty simple, right? You're still doing just a tent, cot,
yep.
just the essentials.
Yep. Well, I mean, I think I've talked about it in the channel before, but as far as like a ground tent instead of a rooftop tent, I like the Jeep has no room in it, right? Like everybody knows that like a Jeep, it doesn't have any room. And most vehicles, mid-sized SUVs, don't have a lot of room anyway. So, I mean, having the roof rack and being able to stick stuff up on the roof to me is super important. And putting a rooftop tent up there, you lose all that space. And I've set that tent up now probably 120 times, and it takes me about 10 minutes to set up. I've seen people set up rooftop tents, takes them about 10 minutes to set up. So like, I'm not above sleeping on the ground, you know what I mean? No pun intended, but like, just, I like having the extra storage. So like, yes, I love that tent. I mean, I spent a lot of money on that tent. It holds up. It's basically a 4-season tent. I've camped in -6 degrees in that tent. So it works for what I need, you know what I mean? So I did a little bit of research. I camped at a crappy Coleman tent. I've done the stupid easy up, bulky, stupid easy up tents and stuff like that. And I just knew I wanted something that was more designed for what I was about to do, right? So like, that's just one of those things. A tent is one of those things. I tried a bunch of different ones and settled on one that I thought was going to work best for this trip, and it really did. It was perfect for 2 people and a dog, and all our stuff. You know what I mean? Plenty of coverage, held up in weather, and so yeah.
Well, and even on your last trip that you've been posting on your channel with the Continental Divide, you were preferring to camp when some of the other guys in your group wanted to do hotels. You know, is that something that frustrated you a little bit? That, you know,
oh yeah, for sure.
It kind of came across that way, but was it more from just like the experience, or was it more because of, like you had mentioned earlier, about the financial, you know, and expectations of others versus, you know, going and having a good night's sleep?
Yeah, it was a combination of all those things, man. It was like, for one, it was definitely the inside joke that came across a lot in those videos. Whereas like, all these guys with their fancy rigs that are constantly sleeping in hotels. And I will say that I enjoyed every single one of those hotels, even the crappiest one we stayed in, because those trails were just absurd. Like, they were already like really difficult trails anyway. Just a lot of 2-track through the middle of nowhere. You know what I mean? Stuff that I had driven on and obviously in months, if not years. And then we had the weather. We had snow, we had rain, we had wind, and it was like cold, and we're in high elevations, and it was just, it was all that combined with the fact that, I didn't have nearly as much money set aside for that trip as I did for the Trans-America Trail. And so I didn't want to waste money staying in hotels when we were fully equipped to be on the road for 6 weeks. I did not need to stop for anything except fuel and food on that trip. I was fully prepared to just camp the entire time. I wanted to camp the entire time. It was also like a personal goal, you know what I mean? That where we only stayed at a hotel a couple times on the Trans-America Trail, but it was just more than I wanted to anyway. Like, I mean, it kind of defeats the purpose. I didn't spend $600 on a road shower to not use it, you know what I mean? Or I really just kind of wanted it as one of those, like a notch in the belt. Like, I did this and I didn't stay in a hotel one time. But I totally get it. It has to be done. Sometimes you just need it. The vehicles needed a lot of maintenance, and we were beating the hell out of them. So it was good to be in town, have a base, have a place to shower, not have to deal with like heavy, high stress stuff and just be filthy and stinky and, all I think it would be easier to do it and camp every day if it was just you. But when you have a group that big, people have needs, you know what I mean? It's not making anybody less of a man because they have to stay in a hotel. I just found it to be one of those things I like to poke at, like the Toyota versus Jeep thing. I don't have anything against Toyota. I just like poking at it, you know what I mean? So.
Let it be known on the record that you do not officially have a vendetta against
Toyota. I do not. And if Toyota's listening, you want to send me something.
Yeah.
I do a quick
always
comparison
open
trip.
for gifts. Hey, stepping back for a second to something you said earlier, which I found interesting, and actually you're the, second or third person that we've had on the show mention this, that you started your channel, like you said earlier, mainly for your friends to be able to experience the adventures that you were going on, as well as your wife kind of being able to keep tabs on you on longer trips like that with where you were at. So did you ever imagine that your channel would be at the point it is now? Like, as of, I think today, you're like 9,200 subscribers to that channel. Hopefully after this podcast experience, we can push you up to 10,000, or at least is the very least of your time worth, right? But Have you ever experienced? Have you ever? Did you ever imagine it would be this big or growing this fast?
No, no, for sure, definitely not. It's been awesome. It's been a wild ride. It's not. It's kind of become a part of like what I have to constantly think about every day, because it is a ton of work. Just maintaining relationships, maintaining networks, and doing what it takes to kind of grow a channel is I don't think people really realize how much work goes into something like that. You know what I mean? There's only, if you think about YouTube channels that are about overlanding, there's really only a handful that have come close to 10,000, even 10,000, even 5,000 subs. You know what I mean? So yeah, no, I when I left, I had no idea. When I saw the first few episodes while we were already on the trip, I had an idea that we had something different. It felt different. It felt unique. It looked great. It sounded great. Like Brax, like again, like I was just so blown away by what Braxton was able to pull off on the road too, nonetheless. And I had an inkling that it could turn into something, but I was always I've been a DJ producer for 20 years. I had tried to be bigger than I ever got, even in a music career and an entertainment career. And it was hard, you know what I mean? And it took me forever to even get as far as I did. And I have some accomplishments, but like that's why I didn't have high expectations for a YouTube channel, because I know it's a ton of work. I know that it takes somewhat of a lucky break, I guess. Once Braxton said that, and I'll try not to curse on your show here. He said we were on our way. We were driving around with Aaron and them, and kind of leading up to Expo. And we weren't originally going to do Expo. Aaron kind of talked us into it. He said he was going to hook us up. We didn't have to worry about paying to get in. We were already going to kind of be in that area anyway. So, screw it, let's do it. And Braxton, maybe 4 days before that, said he just stopped. He goes, you know what? I'm going to shoot the F out of Expo. And I was like, well, what do you mean? He goes, I'm going to film everything. He's like, I want to do like 10 videos. I was like, he's like, I want to do them all day of. So, and I was like, when he said that, I was like, are you sure you want to do that? He's like, do you think it's a good idea? I said, dude, nobody's done that. No, nobody's, you know what I mean? Like people weren't even really doing that for like SEMA, you know what I mean? And I feel like here at SEMA, there was at least like a handful of channels that were making sure that they got stuff out like the day of each. And I don't know if we influenced that. I know we definitely did in the Overland community, because every YouTube channel was kind of hitting us up on the side, being like, "Yo, guys, you're killing us!" Like,
but the difference between that was how honest you guys were about the reviews that you were doing from that expo. Yeah. Like when you guys were reviewing, I remember, I think it was the Overland trailers. And like this whole time you're reviewing these things, there's this struggle of like, you know what? I don't like these things, or I'm not really into that, or, the ones that you were reviewing. I mean, and not only was it an honest opinion, and it was a unique opinion, obviously, because you guys both were relatively new to the scene at the time, but the fact that like, you weren't afraid to, essentially give an honest review about some of these large companies that were producing these, tens of $1,000.
Yeah. And then, and really that honesty stemmed from Braxton. I'm not sure I would have done it that way, honestly. Like I'm not that kind of person. And we get a lot of hate. Like, I mean, we get a ton of like just nasty comments from people that are saying, oh, you guys are just there, just trashing people's setups and trashing Overland, and you guys don't know anything. And we didn't trash anything. I mean, if you go back and really analyze the videos, we weren't trashing anything. We were 100% honest about the fact that we knew nothing and that we were there for the first time. We were literally so new that we had only been overlanding for like 2 weeks. And so it's just in my nature to be honest. And also we didn't have to pander to anybody. You know what I mean? Like now at this point that the channel has grown, like we have partnerships, and it's a little more difficult for me to be as honest as I have been in the past, because I don't want to make the partners look bad, right? But like, and that's only because I feel like people can't handle that kind of truth. People can't handle that kind of honesty, and that translates into making people look bad. Even though all I'm doing is being honest. So anytime, you know, we didn't expect it to get that much traction. I knew that releasing videos day of would help us get traction, but I didn't expect it to blow up to the level it blew up to. I mean, I think we grew like 3,000 subs, like in like 9 days or something. You know what I mean? Like after Expo, after those videos had come out. And most of our traffic does come from the Expo videos.
Part of that was really cool too, because you could see it in you and Braxton's attitude as that series progressed, that there was almost like a feeling of, oh shit, something's happening here. And,
Yeah.
you know, it started to like culminate to the Expo. And then, you know, I didn't interpret those reviews as being negative. And again, you just mentioned it. You guys reiterated multiple times that, hey, this is our first time doing this, you know, and it may not be my thing, but here's my honest, you know, raw impressions of what this is. And what I thought it did was it brought kind of a level of simplicity and honesty to this movement that has just exploded over the last, you know, 5 years maybe, that, you know, has gone from probably a, you know, a very big thing, obviously in Australia and places like that, but then has blown up in the United States now, where it's almost like the cool thing to do. But, you know, what you guys were doing, it brought a little bit of humility to that and said, you know, hey, you don't necessarily need a $20,000 trailer or a $100,000 truck to do this and to have a good time.
And I feel like that's the message we were definitely trying to get across. And you know, listen, you can't please everybody, but when you mention the word humility, I feel like a lot of the people that get most upset about those videos, they don't have that humility, right? They are elitist. They are like, well, I have the money, or, you know, like, or you're just mad because you don't have the money. No, I have the money. Like, I mean, if I wanted to buy a $60,000 trailer, I could pull it off. But I just don't see the need. It's the practicality thing, right? And it's kind of the vibe of our channel since the beginning has been like, you know, sure, it's not cheap, but you don't have to be like, it doesn't have to be lavish. You know what I mean? And you know, there's the other end where people are getting upset because, well, you don't know what it's like traveling with family. Right. I don't know what it's traveling like with family. What I do know is that you don't follow our trip channel. You don't follow the trip videos because you would know that I don't have kids. Life is so busy that she can't join me on a lot of these trips. So like for me, which these videos are all, we don't need the trailers, we don't need the rooftop tents, we don't need the 2019 TRD Pro 4Runner. Like, you know, my Jeep right now has 204,000 miles on it. It's a constant thing in the back of my head all the time, but at the same time, like and then it touches on like the other reason why I started the channel was when I decided to do the Trans-American Trail, I found it nearly impossible to find information about how to do it in a 4x4. That it could be done, but I couldn't find like anything. I mean, there was a couple blogs here and there, not a whole lot of videos. Sir William Goes, who I've become good friends with since since starting the channel, had some videos about it, but his videos are very dash cam and narration, and where I wanted it to be more about like, if you watched our videos, you could do this. Like that's really what I wanted to happen, was use this as a reference. Here's how we tracked it. Here's how we set up here, and we don't know what we're doing. So if we can do it, you can do it too. And in the end, that speaks to practicality. That's, you know, how can we make it so simple that anybody could do it? And that kind of shined through on those Expo videos, because that's the mentality we had as we walked around was, listen, we have viewers, we're getting traction. So let's not disservice them by trying to walk away with like somebody giving us a trailer or you know, starting to talk about, oh, I wish I could have this, or I wish I could have that. It was just, no, like, explain to us why this trailer costs 30 grand. If you can't do it, everybody's going to know that you can't do it. You know what I mean? So, and that was also your chance to maybe explain to people what makes your product more special. Like I, so that's
Well, you guys did. You gave everybody a very, open platform, and basically handed the camera over to them and said, "Hey, this is your opportunity to sell it on." Now, at the time, they may not have known how many views that was going to get, and probably would have changed their sales pitch a little bit. But hey, the platform was there, and it kind of like the product speaks for itself. I thought that series was really good, and I know that you had mentioned in the past that those videos was what kind of launched you guys a little bit. I don't want to go too much into the content of your videos because I want people to go and check them out and experience them for themselves. It's, I wanted to kind of go a little bit more inside baseball with some of the stuff, but the Trans-American Trail series, for those listening, is a really great example of how you can get out and do this on your own, and learning from two guys who, had very limited experience with the overland. Each brought something to the table, but ultimately, you guys had to figure it out on your own, and we're really alone. Whereas on the newest series with the Continental Divide, you guys had a bigger group, and you were traveling as a convoy basically that took away the element of being out there by yourselves. So did you, the one thing that I kind of has been a little apparent with the videos I've seen of your channel recently has been that the content, or at least the shift of what it seemed like where it seemed like the channel was heading at the end of the Trans-American Trail trip to where it is now, seems a little different, in the sense that you guys were kind of on a high, I think, when that Trans-America Trail ended. And there was talks about what you guys, in fact, I think you cut a couple videos about what's next for TrailSpinTV. And then it seems like that has shifted a little bit. Is that a result of Braxton kind of going and doing his thing, and kind of you being here trying to be a one-man band essentially with carrying on TrailSpinTV? What was the difference? What's the difference between where it was at the end of that trip and where it is now?
Yeah, I mean, what you just said is almost spot on. There was a momentum, right? And when we were on the Trans-American Trail, it kind of changed because, like I said, it wasn't about like building a channel, right? It wasn't about we didn't expect explosive growth, and so by the time we were done, our intentions kind of changed over the course of the entire Trans-American Trail trip. So it was like what we wanted to do was in the beginning, at the end, was different once it actually ended, because then we were like, okay, well, we have this channel. We have this platform. People like us. We can take it forward from here. Braxton, again, is a freelance videographer, cinematographer, filmmaker. And up until that point, he was really just kind of working in Chicago with different music artists, doing music videos, stuff like that. Wasn't doing anything too crazy. He tried his own vlog, like talking about he's an athlete, and he was talking about his progress, like physically and with his training and stuff like that. It didn't really catch any traction. By the end of the Trans-American Trail, I thought Braxton was like turning into an overlander, right? Like, and I kind of, and I mean, it was a shoe that definitely fit his feet. But he put down a deposit on a vehicle, and like towards the end, we kept hinting like, oh, wait till you find out, like, what's coming next, blah blah blah. Like a week before we got back, he put down a deposit on a I think it was an 80 series Land Cruiser, right-hand drive, diesel, like shipped in from Japan or something like that. And he put down the $500 eBay deposit because that's what you have to do, is non-refundable. And he didn't have a lot of money saved up. Plus, he took 6 weeks off of his job, so like he was burning through his savings really quick. And he linked up with guy, I always forget his name, from Expedition Overland, Kurt, who's a big Land Cruiser enthusiast and collector. And he got back to us and he ran some numbers and stuff like that. And he's like, something looks fishy. Either they broke them miles back, or they've repainted it. It was like registered as a yellow vehicle for some reason. It wasn't yellow, and all this fishy stuff. So he backed away, and then I didn't hear from him for a while, which I didn't expect to, because both of us just needed to like decompress after that trip. And then eventually he got back to me, and I kept saying, hey, like, look, like people are waiting for the underwear video, man. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we gotta, we're losing our steam here. We weren't. I mean, we were still uptrending on every aspect, even though we weren't uploading anymore. But we all wanted to keep it going. And then eventually he was like, look, he's like, before I left for this trip, I had a plan. He's very goal oriented. So he was like, I had a plan. It was to buy a Red, which is a brand of cinema cameras. I just stepped his filmmaking game up. He wanted to do all this stuff. And he's like, I'm nowhere near where I needed to be by now. So I think I need to get back to work. Like, he's like, I lost all my clients. I lost my apartment. The place he was staying at, his landlord like gave it away. Like his place that he was staying at. He was there on a favor for her. She was a business owner. He was doing videos for her. So all this stuff kind of came crashing down for Braxton when we got back. Whereas for me, like I was on the up and up, and I was in a position where I was losing my job, but I had good spirits about it or whatever. So I wanted to move forward, and then he was just kind of like, look, dude, I can't do it. And I was like, all right. I didn't know how to like slowly break it to everybody. I didn't, I kept hinting like, oh, Braxton's busy, this and that. And it just kind of like slowly kind of was like, well, listen, Braxton's not involved anymore. It definitely wasn't a matter of me wanting to be a Lone Ranger or anything like that. I missed him. I missed his help. I missed the quality of his production. And I thought he made a great teammate. So I would have loved for Braxton to have been involved in a Continental Divide trip. I think it would have brought it to a totally different level. And so in the meantime, I spent a lot of my time trying to learn my gear better. I worked with Braxton to figure out what kind of lenses to buy. Like, I just kind of picked his brain about different things, just to try to keep it at least somewhat at the same level of production, even if it wasn't the same level of entertainment. At least wanted it to look similar. I didn't want people to start watching it when it was just me and be like, holy crap, this whole channel's gone to hell. Like, it doesn't look nearly as good as it did too, and all that stuff. So
you guys definitely created a look on that first trip that I think had a lot to do with, the up climb of the channel was, the look that you were creating, both from a cinema standpoint, but also entertainment, and, the someone behind the camera versus the first person vlog view now, when you're on trying to film yourself and participate in all the stuff that you're trying to do,
right.
But the look of the channel, that was, I have to imagine, an important part that you needed to keep, which it seems like to me, at least from my perspective. And
yeah, for sure, man. Like at least sounding good. I wanted it to be, I mean, I've been an audio engineer for 20 years. Like I understand the importance of quality just from that standpoint. So I didn't want it to start sounding like crap. And then like, all that, it was tough because Braxton had his own style. And I told him from the beginning, this is one of my favorite things about him was the way stuff looked. Like the color tones, it all just screamed his style. If you go back and if you get into his stuff and you go back and you look at the stuff he's done with his music videos and the stuff that he's done in his own vlog, that look kind of follows him because it's his thing. You know what I mean? He uses DaVinci Resolve, whereas most people use Premiere. So like the color grading is different, and the vibe of like his production is different. And then the only other people that are kind of keeping up with our level of production were, like, to me, Mountain State Overland and Expedition Overland. And those both have like camera crews, you know what I mean? So what he was able to pull off as a one-man production team and be part of the show, where he was also a character in the show, a personality in the show, not such a character. But that's just extremely impressive to me. I feel like Braxton's super underrated. As far as that goes, I've had conversations with people that say that they couldn't stand Braxton and they felt like Braxton was like taking over the channel. And I never felt that at all. I never watched a single episode where I was like, oh, hold up, what are you doing? This is my show. You know what I mean? And because it wasn't even about that for me. I was happy to have him along. I was happy to have his help. I was happy that he was documenting something for me and then creating something that was like such high quality that where I can go back 15, 20 years from now and watch this and be happy with the way it looks and the way it sounds, and feel like we really like put a dent in the creative world, not just like in overlanding as a pitch, but yeah.
Right. Well, I felt from a fan standpoint, it was like, I guess what you would say, like a perfect storm, because what Braxton brought to the channel creatively with camera work and cinematography, and from my perspective, when I first watched the channel, you were the personality, right? You were the host of the channel, but at the same time, what I liked about the channel, again, going back to it, was I was someone that could relate to your personality more than I could most YouTube channels, and particularly the overland scene. There's a lot of production, and there's a lot of, again, you don't know if the person that you're watching on camera, if that's
Right.
what they're like in real life. And when you get to the point like we are in today's culture where, most people, including myself, don't even have cable anymore. I mean, your content is through audio and video streaming, mainly on YouTube. And so you have to have a connection there to want to keep coming back and taking in content, and kind of getting to know someone through that video. I felt like you were doing that role on TrailSpinTV, combined with Braxton's cinematography, was just the perfect storm to make you guys rise to up to where you were, where you should have been, of the content that you
Yeah.
were making. So,
Well, I appreciate that, and that's I mean, that's something that even as just as a personal, on a personal level, like something I've struggled with is like I said, I'm very introverted, and I feel like a lot of that is a lot of like self-esteem, self-confidence type stuff where I don't speak out because I'm afraid of the backlash or whatever. And I felt very comfortable with the channel, and that was me. You know what I mean? That is me. And it's crazy to think that there's enough people out there that actually give a shit like about me person, or even just somebody that's willing to be honest in front of a camera, to where that the channel continues to grow and that it's seen the growth that it has. It's just an awesome feeling, and I was happy that Braxton took a bigger role too, because if he hadn't, I've only got so much stuff to talk about. You know what I mean? So if he wasn't constantly like, because he does think like a filmmaker, again, like I brought this up earlier, I felt like he was guiding the show. You know what I mean? He was kind of writing it on the fly. He knew which direction he wanted each day to go from a creative standpoint, and he knew how to push my buttons, and he knew how to create content. Like, you know what I mean? That's because, and that's part of what I feel the difference between the CDT trip was with the Trans-America Trail trip, is that I was just having the camera rolling, trying to capture everything, and then trying to create content based off of what I was able to capture on camera. Whereas when you have another person who's thinking about that stuff in the background while you're just focused on doing what you're doing, they're able to kind of guide it, right? And able to create content that's more entertaining, more engaging. Maybe not so much entertaining, but definitely more engaging. It makes you want to keep watching. And I feel like also daily uploading, because you got to see our personalities kind of responding to the growth of the channel, that added a whole different element to it too, right? Because like I don't feel like there's really been any other channels where you were kind of able to see the reflection of the channel growing as they were putting content out. So it felt very much more real than a lot of the other stuff. It didn't feel overproduced, even though it was well produced. And I think that kind of separates us from some of the other bigger channels out there. And it also kind of hinders our growth a little bit too, because we don't pander, and because we don't create a facade. You know what I mean? We don't, it's not all about the glitz and glamour and only the positive stuff that's happening. I feel like that frustrates some people, and that's, you know what I mean? I would rather it be just real to the point where you can trust me, because even as a business, now that it's grown to the point where it is kind of turning into a business that generates income, and you got to kind of start thinking about networking and partnerships and stuff like that. And we can kind of talk about this too if you want. I don't ever want it to feel like Expedition Overland, where it feels like a Toyota commercial every time it comes. It really, really does, and it's frustrated me because they were such a huge inspiration from the very beginning. That it's like, you don't keep pushing products in my face. Like, I'm here to watch you guys. I like you. I like Clay. I like Kurt. I like watching you. I like your personalities and I like your trips. And I don't ever want TrailSpinTV to be to the point where people are like, come on, man, like, you know, why do you keep sticking products in my face and blah, 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 blah. And the opportunities keep coming in, and I have it. All I can do is keep having honest conversations with every partner that wants to be involved. I'm like, look, if you are actually a fan of the channel, great, because you already understand that I'm going to be as honest as possible. If you're not a fan of the channel, by the way, this is what we're about. So,
right. You got to be okay as much with the produced, you know, the 10, 20, 30 hours of post-production channel as much as you would the campfire confessions or campsite confessions video that you put out on your Continental Divide video, which, you know, that you're not going to get a lot of sponsors that, you know, they want to see that production, but they're the ones that don't and care more about you as the person and backing you and your channel and your vision for the channel. And most importantly, recognizing the audience that you have that's following TrailSpinTV is the target audience that you want to have on your show. I do want to talk about that for a minute, and I won't keep too much of your time, but this is something that I was really interested in personally, because the purpose of this podcast and the purpose of what I'm trying to create here with this show is kind of bringing together people, and the people that listen to this show, the majority of them are going to be like myself. We work full-time jobs, you know, have passions outside of work that are pretty much, aside from our families, the reason why we do what we do and live for the weekend, live for after 5 o'clock type of scenario. And I want to give kind of a glimpse to us into the world of someone like you guys who start from the same place that we do and get to a point where you're creating content, even if it's not full time, but it's still a side gig or whatever, but that you're actually seeing a fan base and a community develop around that passion. So I don't know. It's up to you of how comfortable you feel about sharing a little bit about like where you came from as far as your point of coming back from your first trip. You now have a channel that people are following. It's not just your friends and your wife watching back home, but it's actually 3, 5, now almost 10,000 people subscribe to that network. I guess there's two parts to it. A, how does that play into what you evaluated when you got back as where your career was going to head and what you were going to do both on the side, but then with the channel? And two, what's it been like to feel like you have to continue this, you know, train?
Yeah, that's now I'll go as deep as we want to let it get, because again, like I'm an open book. But as far as like, it's different for me because I got laid off from my job of 5 years for taking my first vacation ever, and coming up with a system where they were able to replace me because of the system I created to kind of train quickly, efficiently, just because that's what they told me I needed to do in order to take this vacation. So when I got back from the Trans-American Trail and the channel had grown, and now we were not able to monetize the channel until the Colorado Sand Dunes episode. That night was the night we applied for monetization. We didn't get approved for it for a month and a half. So we didn't even get approved for monetization until after we got back from the Trans-American Trail. Even though we had hit all the criteria to get it. So to me, I was like, I didn't even know what kind of money it would be generated from. I had no idea. I could have done the research. I mean, it's pretty easy to figure out mathematically like how much money a channel makes per month based on just a couple things. But all I knew was that I didn't have a job anymore. Um, I I had qualifications to find another type of a job based on what I was doing, which is just working customer service and product management at a basically a tech startup company that was based out of New York City. I knew I wanted to work remotely. So like I had all these ideas. I was like, well, if the channel generates a certain amount of money per month, I could maybe take it full time on the road. I could find another remote type gig, and I could just work from the road like a couple other YouTubers do, and I could make a living. Um, but that I didn't have anything based. I didn't have anything to base that on, and I wasn't having an easy time finding a new job. So the channel was picking up steam. Eventually, it got monetized. We kind of lost out on a lot of the money that the expo videos would have made because we didn't get monetized until after they kind of, the heat of that kind of died down. So going forward, I looked for local jobs and everything. Like I didn't go to college, so I was finding things that were basically anywhere from like 11 to like $13 an hour. The economy here in Peoria, Illinois, is not good. So there's not a lot of like money making opportunities like there is in New York, where I can take advantage of like street smarts and networking skills and stuff like that to find a job that pays $50,000-$60,000 a year. So I started to sweat a little bit with that, and I started to kind of burn through my savings and burn through my credit. And there was a bunch of times where I was just like, you know what, screw it. I'm just gonna not work, and I'm gonna focus 100% of my efforts on YouTube. But I also knew that it would kind of take some of the genuine feel of the channel away, because I knew that there would be certain things I would have to do to make sure that it generates a certain amount of revenue, because now I got to get by. Now I got to ask people for Patreon money. Now I got to work with products, and affiliates. I got to get my affiliate stuff on point. It was like all this stuff. I was like, you know what? It's not why I started it. It's not why I'm doing it. It's not going to be fun if I do that. And so some more time went by, and then Aaron kept hitting me up. He's like, you're gonna do this Continental Divide trip or what? You're gonna do this trip or what? And I was like, at the time, I was like, it's right at the end of when my severance for the company was up. I knew I would have just about enough money to pull it off, and I was still kind of like in the air about it. I was like, man, by the time I get back, it's gonna be like Thanksgiving, and it's gonna be hitting rolling into December. I'm not gonna need money for Christmas gifts. I'm not gonna have a job lined up, and like all this stuff. And I ended up putting out that video, Overlanders for Hire, like kind of, I think it was like late July, where I was kind of at the peak of like, what am I going to do with my time? Like, what is going on? Is this even a possibility? So I didn't put that video out looking for money. I didn't have my hands out. I was just having an honest moment with the camera, where I was just kind of like, is this something that we could do? Is this something that you guys would even want to see us do? Like, if I was to do this full time, am I just asking for a total disaster? You know what I mean? Like, I just wanted the feedback and all that. And dude, people reached out, like, it was just insane. Like, I mean, the Patreon went from like $0 a month to like $300 a month, like within a week. People were sending me emails, offering jobs. Like, I mean, just the one guy was like, oh, come up to North Dakota and work the oil rigs and make like $100,000 a year. And I was like, wow, that's some $100,000 a year. And I was like, you know what? Screw that. Like, that's crazy. Like, I'm even thinking like that. Like, I'm not an oil rig guy. Like, I'm not built for it. I'm not like, I would be miserable. You know what I mean? So I just kept putting it off and putting it off. And I ended up going on the trip and coming back. And when I got back, I started my own company. It's a video production company. And I do real estate videos, like walkthrough, guided tour type videos. I work with real estate agents, and I've done some other stuff too related to video. And that's been great. And I don't think that I would have done that if it wasn't for the experience I had and the confidence I built up by starting a YouTube channel and being confident behind the camera and like that. So I feel like that.
So just to backtrack 1 second, did you find out that you didn't have a job waiting for you while you were still on the trip, or did you not find out?
To make it even crazier, I drove all the way from Oregon. Well, I drove back to Peoria to drop Braxton off at his car, and then I went straight to New York City. So I crossed the country over 6 weeks, and then I drove all the way from Oregon to New York City to take an accelerated product management course at a school called General Assembly. People from New York might know what that is, but it's basically like a technical school for tech. companies and startups. And anyway, I went to train to be a product manager because I was the company's product manager, but I had told them that I wanted more training. I wanted to be better at my job. And it sent me to that class, and it was expensive. And I think it was like $15,000 or something like that. But not only did they give me 6 weeks paid vacation, they paid for me to go to this course. And I went to go hang out, and I was gassed up. They had just gotten a new office. They took over Spike Lee's like old office in New York City, like all crazy stuff. And it was like, it felt like everything was like, man, the channel's doing good. I went to school. I'm educated. Like I was like, we're gonna come back, we're gonna crush it. And they were just like, look, I felt like I think they were doing like a controlled demolition where it was just like we're just let the company just kind of sink. And they were like, you have two options. You could either continue to work for us 3 months with the future being unknown. We'll circle back in 3 months, and more than likely we're probably still gonna have to let you go. So I would have been making unemployment. They said, or we can give you your full salary for the next 3 months, and we'll help you try to find a new place to work or whatever. And so I just took the severance because I was like, in my head, I was like, well, then I could take this another trip. Then I could cross the country both ways, like, you know what I mean, in 1 year. And how cool is that?
Right.
And so, yeah, it just, no, I didn't know about it. And I mean, everything hit a peak. I felt like I was on top of the world. You know what I mean? Like I was like, look at what just happened in the past like month. Like everything's come together. You know what I mean? Like, and
right.
Yeah, that was like super depressing deal, man. It was one of those. It definitely knocked me down like so many pegs that I was just like, but that's the way it goes, right? I mean, that's the life is
Yeah.
life is all about frequency, and you can't.
And I appreciate you being honest about that because I think that people out there, even myself included, I've been in the same industry my whole life. I've always worked in construction, have worked myself from the ground up as a laborer when I was 18, and have worked up to the level I'm at now, which I work in project management for a large commercial contractor, but no college education, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm still in that grind, right? Like even the fact that like I feel rushed at the end of the day to come back and do something like this, which I love doing, and worrying about making it back home in time and sitting in LA traffic to get back to my house so that I can make it on time for this, So, what advice do you have, or I guess what perspective do you have for people out there, including myself, who want to strive to get to the point where it sounds like you're heading right now or on the brink of doing something for yourself and kind of being your own boss, but also just the freedom to go to work and do something that you absolutely are passionate about versus what, you have to do to pay the bills. Is it something that's everything you thought it would be, or does it drag that passion down a little bit because now it becomes the job?
And that you're referring to the fact that I started a video company.
Yeah, well, both the video production company, but also TrailSpinTV, which is now obviously generating you some income.
Yeah.
I mean, does it take away from the joy of being out there and doing what it is you enjoy, which is the overlanding, but now you have the pressure of the sponsors, the affiliates, people who are like myself, who are fans, who want to see more content, all of these things. Does it feel like the same burdensome job that a 9 to 5 now, or are you happy being in a place where you're doing things that you love?
I'm not, the company's doing okay. I'm about maybe a little over halfway to making what I made at the job that I lost, but it's only, I mean, again, I only started in November. It really only started to pick up in like March, April. So it's in its early stages as far as generating revenue. I'm able to pay my bills barely. But the freedom of being able to like do all the work for the week in like a day or two, you know what I mean? Do all the shooting, all the videos, shoot all the videos one day, spend all night editing them, or spend all the next morning editing them or whatever, and then making like a decent living, really only working like 12 hours, whereas I used to have to work 40 hours, right? That is incredible, like such an incredible feeling. Like it's so awesome to just be like, if my wife happens to get home from work at like noon and we want to go grab lunch, we can go grab lunch. I mean, it could be a 2 hour lunch, or it could be a 4 hour. We can get day drunk. You know what I mean? Like, I could do that when I had like a real, when I say real job, but when I had a boss. So yeah, right. I did work remotely, so there's been some. We could talk for hours about some of the stuff I've done while working. Um, I would say, as far as like advice, like how do you get there? I've always just kind of been, well, since meeting my wife, I've been the kind of person who takes like big risks. You know what I mean? Even just doing the Trans-American Trail, it's a huge risk. Like doing Continental Divide is a huge risk. Walking away from a job and then trying to start your own company is a huge risk. I've gone sailing and I have zero prior sailing experience, just because I met somebody who told me this trick to kind of get booked on a boat, and it ended up happening. And I lived in the Caribbean with my wife for a couple of years, so I left my job that I was working there. I've always just, I want to have a story. You know what I mean? Like I want my, like everybody's writing their, like your story is your story. Your life story is like, I don't want my life story to be boring, man. Like I don't want it to be like, if I ever do end up with grandchildren where I'm old and gray and I'm like, oh, I work every day and put a little nugget away. You know what I mean? And, thanks for visiting me in the nursing home. And like I don't want it to be like that. I want to be like, look at the shit I did. You know what I mean? Like, and when people say, oh, you can do whatever you want to do, or you can be what you want to be. Like when your parents said that to you, or if they did, mine really didn't, but I know some parents did. Um, I don't want that to be like, oh, I could be a teacher, or I could be a fireman. Like I want to be like, oh, I could cross the world in a Jeep, or I could, I mean, literally, like if I get something in my head, I have a hard time talking myself out of it. You know what I mean? I don't think it's an optimism thing. I'm very much a realist and almost pessimistic in a way, but like, um, I almost just expect the worst and then shoot for the best, which is kind of a different outlook than most people have. So I would say that if you're trying to like, if you're trying to figure out whether you should like get away from the crappy job you hate going to, absolutely 100% yes to it. Don't ever worry about money. God bless America. You can always claim bankruptcy. No, nobody's sending you to jail. If you have ambition and you have a little bit of intelligence, you can always make money. I mean, you could drop me out of an airplane, and wherever I land, I'll land and I'll start making money. So it's never really about that. Again, I don't have kids, so my situation is vastly different than a lot of people. If I had children, I would make more calculated risks. I wouldn't be doing, and obviously I would want to take them along, so I wouldn't be doing this crazy shit like that it would do. But I would say, like, if you have any doubt in your head, like just do it, man. I try to convince my friends. I have a friend that like wants to. He tells me all the time he wants to jump out of a helicopter in Chile and snowboard down a mountain. I'm like, so do it, dude. Like, what's stopping you? He'll be like, oh, I gotta get somebody to watch the dog. I'm like, you gotta get somebody to watch the dog. Like, are you kidding me? Like, that's just a ridiculous excuse. You know what I mean? So I don't really give myself excuses to not do something. And sometimes I am very impulsive, so that I have that kind of going for me. If you look at me and you think that what I do is cool, and you think that what I do is like the right thing to do, just know that I'm extremely impulsive, and I make impulsive decisions. And yes, I do create a calculated task list and goal, like based on impulse. But it's hard to get an idea out of my head once I get it. And but I've just been able to do so much cool stuff just because I just had the balls to do it. You know what I mean? So
Well, and I think that obviously there's a level too when we're talking about, kind of making your own way. Hustlers are going to rise to the top in any situation, and if you have that gene in you and you have that,
yeah,
that air about you, you're always going to find a way to survive no matter what it is. I mean, that's why I'm like a fan of, like, guys like Gary Vee, who, he goes out and makes videos about going to yard sales and how much money you can
yeah,
make on a
I
Saturday at
love
a yard
that,
sale.
man, because that's
It's like,
that's the like the
that's
term
it.
hustle porn or whatever, like that a lot of people feel like well, that leads to burnout, and you shouldn't be telling people to work that hard about whatever. But the thing is this: if you're working a job you hate, you're working twice as hard as somebody who's working a job that they enjoy. So really, you have to be twice as much of a hustler. You know what I mean? So like, which is crazy to me. It just like, there's nothing worse than like dragging yourself out of bed to like go to a job you hate. Like, it's just terrible. It's not a place I ever want to be again. You know what I mean? And you know, like, yeah, sure. If like what I enjoy doing is not paying as well, it doesn't matter because I'm earning like personal health and wellness and mental dollars. You know what I mean? Like you only have so many mental dollars that you can spend in a day. You can't make more than another person, but you can definitely spend more than another person.
Right, right. Hey, I appreciate you being so honest and open. This has been great, man. I'm excited to release this episode. I think people are gonna dig this, and those who don't know about your channel are gonna get to check it out. And I want to finish up. I kind of finish every episode with two kind of makeshift inside the actor studio questions for my guests. So the first one is, if you could be any place with any drink in your hand with any artist coming out of the radio, what would those three things be?
Personally, I'm in love with a country called Grenada, which is in the South Caribbean. It's just north of Trinidad. Will yell at me and say, "Isn't it Grenada?" No, it is Grenada. My wife went to medical school down there, so I would say that I would like to be there, and with something called a Grenadian iced tea in my hand, which is 6 Grenadian rums, and they're all like super overproof and got like real coconut water in it, real pineapple juice. Like, it's delicious and dangerous.
Wow.
With any artist that was on the radio.
This is a dangerous question to ask a music guy, because it's going to be impossible for you to probably answer, huh?
Yeah. Plus, I only listen to the radio. So,
well, any artist in general. Introduce us to someone new.
Man, there is so many. You know, I just recently found out about Logic, and I'm a huge hip hop head from back in the day. He seems like a character. He seems like an interesting dude. He seems really super smart. I bet you the kind of conversations that go down between him and his friends are probably on some next level.
Cool.
Yeah, I think I'd like to just chill with him and kick back a drink or two and just kind of pick his brain. Like, I'm not an MC or anything like that, but I do respect the craft. You know what I mean? And seems like a genuine guy. Seems like a lot of fun, positive, and
yeah, that's cool.
And smart.
The iced tea sounds good. The last one I have is I kind of like to do a little bit of a vocal tag of someone that you are a fan of that you would be interested in hearing on our podcast. Is there somebody out there that you'd be interested in hearing a little bit of inside baseball about what they're doing? It doesn't necessarily have to be geared towards overlanding. Anybody on YouTube or out there making content that you think would be an interesting to get?
Yeah, I mean, like on a level, like on an honesty and open level, like we just kind of had. I'm a big fan of I Am Jake, and I think it would be cool to have like an inside the actors studio type interview with him. And I mean, over an extended period of time like this, like a good hour and a half, and just kind of hear him talk about all the stuff that he's gone through, and as a backstage pass type thing to kind of. Because I know he went through some stuff, and it kind of he changed directions, and his channel is all over the place, and he's been through so much. And yeah, I'm a big fan of his. So yeah, for sure, like I Am Jake would be cool to hear from
so
him.
You heard it now, Jake. Brandon call you out, and you're going to be getting an email from me, and I'm going to bug you as much as I bugged him. And hey, I appreciate you doing this, and I'd love to have you back anytime you want. Let me know when you need to promote something, want to come on and talk more. And, I'd love to have you on as a guest host as well. We get some people on here that you'd like to talk to. You have an open invitation to let me know. So
yeah, dude, Dustin, it's been awesome, and I really appreciate you reaching out, and I'm happy to have been a part of the show. And yeah, for sure, I was going to say, man, anytime that you want to do this, let's just shoot me the email. We'll work it out.
Sounds good.
All right,
thanks,
dude.
Brandon.